Yeah, boy say so. The mice is like this. It's Pashas Lech Lecha. You know, there's a Mishnah in Ovis, Perik Hey, that says, Asoro Doirois, Me Odom Va'ad Noach, Lohidia Kamo Erech Apayim Lefonov. There were 10 generations from Odom, Harishon until Noach, and that comes to show, the measure, the degree of the Rebbeinu Shalom's patience. Kamo erech apayim lefonim shekol hadoros hoyu machisin uboyin. All those 10 generations from Adam until Noach were machisin uboyin. They angered the Rebbeinu Shalom, and ad shehevi aleim esmei hamabul. It took 10 generations until he brought the mabul, and then asoro doris minoach v'ad Avram. Lohidia kamo erech apayim lefonov. This also teaches us the measure, the degree of the Rebbeinu Shalom's patience. Shekol hadoros hoyu machisinu boim achebo Avram v'kibul schar kulon. So it's interesting that the Mishnah has two limudim. Lohidia kamo erech apayim lefonov. One limud is from the Asora Doris mi Odom vad Noach, and the second limud is from the Asora Doris mi Noach vad Avram. Why do we need two limudim for the kamo erech apayim lefonov? The Teisus Yontif says that from the second generations, from the generations between Noach and Avram, we find out more about the Rebbeinu Shalom's erech apayim, because not only did he wait, but even after the 10 Doros were over, he didn't destroy them like he destroyed the world in the Mabul, but he wasn't Mabed them in Olam, so it's more erech apayim. But really, we need to understand, if so, I mean, how does this express erech apayim? He didn't punish them. So that's erech apayim. Erech apayim, usually we understand, means that he waits, and he waits, and he waits. But here, is it about waiting? Here, l'chara, these generations weren't punished. We also don't understand how come the Mishnah says, Asora doris minoyach vad Avrom, loidia kamo erech apayim lefonov, shekol adoris hoy machisinu boim, ad shebo Avrom, v'kibul schar kulam. The Mishnah includes Avrom's coming and taking the reward of these generations. The Mishnah includes that in the erech apayim. What does that have to do with patience? The fact that Avram came and he took the schar of those 10 generations. And we also need to understand why really is it different? The first 10 generations, when it came to an end, the Rebbeinu Shalom destroyed the world with a Mabul. And the generations from Noach until Avram, the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't destroy the world as a consequence of the 10 Doros that were Machisin Uboim. And we also need to understand, why is it that Avram got the reward of all those generations, and Noach didn't get the reward of the generations that preceded him? L'chara, we would say that in order to receive the rewards of the previous generations, you have to be on a higher madrega of tzidkis. Only Avram Avinu was on that level that he deserved not only to be rewarded for his own good deeds, but he also was awarded the reward of the previous generations, whereas Noach wasn't on such a high level, and therefore he was rewarded for himself, but he didn't get the schar of the doros that preceded him. But if that's the case, so Avram Avinu should have gotten schar for 20 generations, not only for the 10 generations. Noach didn't get anything, and he should have gotten the schar for the 20 generations. So obviously we see that it's not about the difference between the level of Avram and the level of Noach, but the difference is between those 10 generations and these 10 generations. For those 10 generations, there was no schar keneged kulam that can be received by Noach, whereas the 10 generations from Noach vad Avram were generations that their reward could be received by Avram, and therefore he only got rewarded they only got the reward of those 10 generations, not of the 10 generations me Adam va'ad Noach. But we need to understand. So what's the difference? Why is there schar keneged kulam for the doris of me Noach va'ad Avram, and there's no schar keneged kulam for the doris me Adam ad Noach? We don't understand Bechlal. What does it mean to get the schar keneged kulam? I mean, generations that were angering the Rebbeinu Shalom, generations that were machisen ubayin. So, what kind of reward did they deserve that was then given to someone else? I mean, we might think that we're talking about those few good things that they did, that they deserved reward for, but that can't be, because any good deed that was done by those generations, they should have been paid for immediately. Adrabah, it says that the pasuk says in Parshas V'eschanan u'mishalem l'soinov elponov lahavidoi, that Rishonim get paid for their good deeds immediately in this world, in order that they shouldn't have a chelik in the world to come. So we can't be talking about the good deeds that they did. So what kind of schar do these doros deserve that was given to Avram? L'chora, we need to say that everyone has lechatchila, everyone that comes to this world, there's reward that's set aside to be given to him if he lives his life the way he ought to live it. And that schar that would potentially go to the Russia, since he messed up, it doesn't go to him, and the tzaddik gets that schar. But if that's true, so we need to understand, so where did the schar that was potentially set aside for the doris from Adam until Noach, where did that schar go? Nobody took it. So what does that mean? And we also don't understand Bechlal, what's the logic that if schar was set aside to be given to someone and he messes up, it's given to someone else. What is that supposed to mean? So in the Midrash Rabbah, on the pasuk Noach ish tzadik tomim hoya b'doyrosav, it says Omar Rabbi Yochanan kol mi shenemar boy hoya. Whenever the Torah uses the term hoya, he was mitchilosei v'ad soifoi tzadik hoya. And since it says tzadik tomim hoya b'doyrosav, it means that he was a tzaddik. Noach was a tzaddik from the beginning to the end. Hey sivun lei. They asked the kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. V'hoksiv, there's a pasuk in Yecheskel. Echad hoya Avram v'yirash es haaretz. Me'ato hu tchilosoi v'hu soifoi. Can we say that Avram was a tzaddik from the beginning? We know that he wasn't. Amaloi. So the answer is af hiloi tavra. That's not a pircha. The Horeb Levi b'shem Reish Lakish Omar ben Sholoi Shonim Hikir Avram as Borei. So since Reb Levi said that Avram Avinu recognized the Rebbeinu Shalom already at the age of 3, so he was a tzaddik mitchilosoi v'ad soifoi. So it's not a kash. The Medrash continues. Reb Chanina v'Reb Yochanan tarvei hoin omrin ben arboim u'shmoinish shona hikir Avram as Borei, that he was 48 when he recognized the Rebbeinu Shalom. So, if so, he wasn't a tzaddik mitchilos v'ad soifoi. Umani mekayim hoya. So how do we teach the word hoya that appears in the context of Avram Avinu? Echad hoya Avram shahoya mesukon lahadrich es ha'olam kula b'tshuva. That he was mesukon, he was destined to guide the entire world b'tshuva. Now, Rabbi Yochanan is the one that Lechatchila said, Kol mokem shenema hoya mitchilose v'atzoifei hoya tzadik. And he himself says over here in the end, Reb Chanina v'Reb Yochanan tarvei hoin amrin. Yeah, Reb Yochanan also said that he was 48. And what do we say? So we can't say like we said according to Reb Levi that since he was 3, he's considered a tzaddik from the beginning. And therefore we say that the Hoya is Hoya Mesukin Lahadrich Es Olam Kula B'tshuva. So if so, it would seem like Rabbi Yochanan went back on his original statement, because Rabbi Yochanan originally said that wherever it says Hoya, it means that Mitchilosei Vad Seifei Tzadik Hoya. Now he's saying that not necessarily so, because Avram wasn't a Tzadik Mitchilosei Vad Seifei, but he was Mesukin Lahadrich Es Olam Kula B'tshuva. But the Lashon HaMedrash is mashma that he wasn't Choyzeh, and it all works out together. As it says, Umani Mekayim. And how do you learn the Hoya? He was Mesukin Lahadrich Es Olam Kula B'tshuva. Yeah. The Rashash really points out, the Rashash in his Pirush on the Medrash, that there's a contradiction over here in Rabbi Yochanan himself. And Bemis, we don't understand B'chlal what this means. If Hoya always means that he's a tzaddik from the beginning to the end, so how is this taken care of by saying that he was Mesukin Lahadrich Es Olam Kulei B'tshuva? No. So therefore what? I mean, how does that take care of the Hoya? But Bemis, if you think about it, from this midrash, it would seem like there's a tzad maila in the tzidkis of Noach over the tzidkis of Avram Avinu. Noach was a tzaddik mitchilas vat seifei, and Avram Avinu was not a tzaddik mitchilas vat seifei. It's a bit hard for us to accept that Noach was a greater tzaddik than Avram Avinu. So, my father said, based on there's a Gemara in Yoima Daf Chav Beis, Amar Reb Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Mipnei ma lo nimshecha malchus beis Shaul. Why was Shaul's descendants didn't continue to be malachim? Lo nimshecha malchus beis Shaul, mipnei shelo hoya boy doifi. There was no flaw in Shaul's ancestry, so the pshat is he there was no doifi mishpacha, as Rashi says, and therefore his children were not kings. The way Rashi understands it is because they would be misgo'eh, they would be haughty. The Amar Reb Yochanan, Mishum Reb Shimon ben Yochai Tzadok, Ein ma'amidin parnes ala tzibur. We don't appoint somebody to be a leader of the tzibur. Elohim ken kupa shel shrotzim tluya lo me'acharav. Literally means a box of creeping animals hanging from his back. In other words, only somebody that has a kupa shel shrotzim tluya lo me'acharav, we appoint him to be a leader. So in the Noam Elimelech, in the end of Parshas Nosai, he explains that a Manig Yisrael is meant to lead the entire people from the top to the bottom, and therefore he has to be able to connect with them and understand where they're at and guide them and lead them. Shaul was a B'chir Hashem. It says about him, Mishichmoy umayla gavoya mikol ha'am. He was heads and shoulders above the rest of his generation. We say Ben Shana Shaul b'molchoi. The Gemara says he was Ben Shana b'loy chet. He was flawless. He was perfect. Ben Shana sh'loy tam chet. Rashi says, and that's why we're saying loy nimshich malchusoi. Says the Noam Elimelech, because loy hoya by doifi, and he wasn't able to connect with the sinners. He wasn't able to connect with the lower class of people. Only David, who had a kupa shel shrotzim tluya loy me'achorov, as Rashi says, he came from Rus HaMoyaviyah, so his malchus had a kiyum. He's the gever hukam ol. Chazal say heikim ulo shel tshuva loy hoya David roi lo isay maise with Bathsheba. Gzeras melech hoya litin pischoin pele shovim, as it says in the beginning of Avodah Zorah. So David, because he wasn't flawless, that made him into someone that could lead the entire Jewish people. Now we see that in spite of the fact that Noach was a ish tzaddik tomim hoya b'dorosav, and he and his family were saved from the Mabul. But nevertheless, he had no success in influencing people. He wasn't madrich his generation to be shomer the derech Hashem. According to this, it's not that in spite of the fact that he was a tzaddik tomim hoya b'deroisav, he didn't have a hashma on them, but it's because he was. Meaning he was the type of tzaddik that loy hoya b'doifi. He was mitchilosoi v'atzoifei tzaddik hoya, and memela he couldn't connect with, he couldn't understand the nefesh hachoitas. And that's also what it says. Esho Elokim is halech noyach. Rashi says he needed a sad letoimchoi. He needed divine support. In other words, he got to where he got with the Siyata Deshmaya alone. He didn't have any personal challenges that an Oved Hashem has. And therefore he couldn't guide others. Masha'enkein Avram Avinu. It says, Vayikra b'shem Hashem keil olam. Chazal say, the Gemara says in Sotah Daf Yud, Al tikra Vayikra. Not only that he called in the name of Hashem, but Vayakri. He made others call. In other words, Avram Avinu hikri l'shmoi shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'feh kol oiver v'shov. And as it says, Hanefesh asher osu b'choron she'echnison tachas kanfei Ashchina zok Rashi. Avram megayeres ha'anoshim, Sora megayeres es ha'anoshim, umale olav hakosuv ki'ilu asa'um. That's what we say. Avram Avinu was masukin lahadrich es ha'olam kuloi b'tshuva. Now, according to this, that's the reason that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't give him that sad letoimchoi. He didn't give him that siyata d'shmaya. He wasn't granted the opportunity of being a tzaddik mitchilosoi v'atzoifoi. He had to be a mischazek v'hoilech b'tzidkoi me'elov, as Rashi says, because that was the Gzeras Melech. He was mesukin lahadrich esolam kula b'tshuva, and therefore he had to be raised between Ovdei Avodah Zarah and find his way through trial and error. I mean, through the self-effort. By undoing all the avodah zaros. Only by doing so did he become capable of lahadrich es ha'olam kula b'tshuva. You know, the pasuk says in Tilim, Nun Aleph, Alamdo poishim drochecha v'chatoim eilecha yoshuvu. So, Alamdo poishim drochecha, I teach the transgressors your ways. V'chatoim eilecha yoshuvu. So if we understand chatoim in the sense of choitim, means that the sinners will return to you. But it's interesting that the pasuk uses the term chatoim and not choitim. But there's also another question here, because a paisheya is amazing and a choite is a shoygig. And so why does the pasuk say alamda poishim drachecha and chatoim meaning choitim eilecha yoshuvu? I mean, we're not talking about the same people. According to what we said, it could be that David the Gemara says, was Heikim Ula Shel Tshuva. He showed the way of Tshuva to his generation. So he's saying, Alamda Poishim Drachecha. And through that, Chatoim Eilecha Yoshuvu. My own sins are Eilecha Yoshuvu, because I utilized my sins in order to do Tshuva and to encourage other people to do Tshuva. And that's alamda poishim drachecha v'chatoim eilecha yoshuv. The chatoim themselves are eilecha yoshuv. So, having said that, it comes out that in the end of the day, when Avram Avinu was madrich es ha'olam kuloi b'tshuva, right? So, and he was able to do that only because of the spiritual wandering that he experienced. So his past, his, so to speak, negative past, became part of who he is and what made him able to teach and to guide his generation. And therefore, true, he's not a hoya in the simple sense of tzaddik mitchilosei v'atzoifoi like Noach, but he's hoya in a deeper sense, because by becoming what he became, he uplifted, he raised, he transformed his entire past, and it all became part of who he is and what he accomplished and the role that he played. Therefore, he's considered a tzaddik mitchilasvad seifai. You know, the Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, Perik Aleph. Yes, the Rambam says, you know, Kevon shenigmal eson zeh, hischil shoiteit bedaitoi. That as soon as this eson, he's talking about Avraham Avinu, that the pasuk refers to in Maskela eson ezrochi eson, this mighty man. Since this mighty man was weaned, after this mighty man was weaned, he began to explore and think. He was a child. He began He was wondering, how is it possible that for the sphere to continue to revolve without having anyone controlling it, and who's causing it? So, and he said, it's impossible that it causes itself to revolve. He didn't have a teacher. He didn't have anyone to inform him. Elo mushka bu'ur kasdim. He was mushka. He was mired in Ur Kasdim, bein oivdei koichavim hatipshim, between the foolish idol worshippers, Ve'ove ve'imoy v'chol ha'om oivdei koichavim. His parents and everybody were idol worshippers. V'hu oived imon. He worshipped with them. V'liboy meshoiteit u'mevin. In spite of the fact that he was being oived avodah zarah, his heart was exploring and gaining understanding. Ad shehisig derech ha'emes, v'heven kavat tzedek, until he reached the point where he appreciated the way of truth, and he understood the derech ha'emes, the v'heven kavat tzedek. He understood the path of righteousness. Mitzvunosoi hanechoino, v'yoda sheyeshem elokah echad, v'hu manik hagalgol, v'hu borah hakoil, etc., etc. And the Rambam says, "Uben arboim shono hikir Avram es boirod." Avram was 40 years old when he recognized the Rebbeinu Shalom. Kevon shehikir v'yoda hischil lahoshiv tshuvois al bnei ur kasdim. Right. So then he started to formulate responses to the arguments against the bnei ur kasdim. And the Rambam goes on and how he eventually became Vayikra B'Shem Hashem Keil Olam, and people gathered around him and he influenced them and he brought them close to the Derech Hashem. So you know that the Ravid says, when Avram, the Rambam says that he was 40 years old, the Ravid said, Omar Avram, yesh agode ben sholoshon. That is an agode that says he was 3 years old. Shenema Ekev asher shoma Avram bekoili, minyan Ekev. Ekev is 172, Ayin Kuf Beis, and Avram lived 175 years. So Ekev asher shoma Avram bekoili, the pshat that for 172 years he was Shama B'Koili, meaning that he was Hikar as Boire at the age of 3. That's what the Ravid says. So the Hagoyis Maimuniyos says, Hine nucha lekayim, according to the Rambam, Gam Divrei Resh Lakish, the Omar ben Sholosh Shonim Hoya, that we could work it out, that it's not a stira, it's not a contradiction. Shehu moine mishehischil l'shoiteit b'machshavtoi v'lachshav b'borei. We can say that it's not really a machlokes. Rish Lakish is counting the not only the years when he reached, not from the point that he reached his full understanding and recognition, but he's already counting from the time that he was maschil l'shoiteit b'machshavtoi v'lachshav b'borei k'dei l'kayim drosha the Ekev. And so brings the Kesef Mishnah in the name of the Ramach. And so says the Meiri in his Hagdama to Tilim. He writes, as soon as he had a bit of das, he was still worshipping Avodah Zarah with the rest of his family. Who Umeshoited beliboy. He was thinking back and forth. V'loy hoya mishiel amdeu. V'hu mushka b'zois emunah burikastim. V'al zeh omru chazal. Ben sholoy shonim hikav romes boiroi. V'hu al derech tzachus. Al zman shu zman ascholas limud. That we call the zman of the ascholas limud, we already call that Ekev Asher Shom Avrom B'Koili. So we see clearly that even those years that he was Ovid Avodah Zarah, we consider them years of Shoma Avrom B'Koili, just because he was Meshoiteit B'Machshavtoi. He was wandering and thinking and exploring and searching for the truth. And everything that he got to eventually came through that exploration and spiritual wandering. And so according to what we said, that was the Rebbeinu Shalom's mechuven, that he set him up for this, because he was mesukin lahadrich es ha'olam kuloi b'tshuva. So avada, these years really become part of who Avram Avinu is, because only by being raised bein oivdei avodah zarah hatipshim, he knew how to pinpoint their mistakes, and he found the right way in a way that he could teach others. So when Rabbi Yochanan says that since he was Mesukin lahadrich es ha'olam kuloi b'tshuva, therefore it says hoya, that he was a tzaddik mitchilosav v'ad soifoi, this is what these Rishonim are saying, that true, he didn't recognize the Rebbeinu Shalom when he was 3. He only recognized him when he was older. But nevertheless, since he started searching and exploring at that age, it's considered Shoma Avram B'Koili. He's already considered connected with the Rebbeinu Shalom, and therefore he is considered, in a sense, a Hoya Tzaddik Mitchilosei V'ad Soifoi, since his role and mission in life was lahadrich es ha'olam kulei b'tshuva, and that can only come by going through that stage. You know, according to the Mahalach of the Hagoyis Maimuniyos and the Ramach and the Meiri, it comes out that the Iked Rosh of Rish Lakish from Ekev is only coming in order to include the years of spiritual wandering and search in his Seder Avodah. Now, Rish Lakish himself, was a Baal Tshuva who met Rabbi Yochanan as a dramatic Gemara in Bav Metzia Daf Pei Dalet, and we see by Rabbi Yochanan the Gemara that the Gemara says by that Rish Lakish Yom Echad have a miflagi b'bei medrasha. One day there was machlokes in the Beis Medrash, hasayof v'hasakin v'hapigyon v'haroymach umagol kotzer me'emesai mekablin tuma mishaz gemar malachtan. When is a knife or a sword or a spear, when is it considered gemar malacha? Emesai gemar malachtan. Rabbi Yochanan amar mishiyat from bekifshin. Rabbi Yochanan said that it's finished in the furnace. But Rish Lakish amar mishiyitzach tzechon b'mayim, that it's only considered gemar malacha after you rinse it off with water, after you take it out of the kifshin. Amalei, Rabbi Yochanan said to Rish Lakish, lista b'listayu seyoda. A robber understands, the tools of robbery, and therefore he knows when the gemar malacha of sakin, pigyoin, v'roimach is. So you see that Rish Lakish actually used the knowledge that he acquired before he did tshuva. He used it in the Beis Medrash after he did tshuva, and he's the one that says that Ekev Asher Shom Avram B'Koili, that from the age of 3 we already consider it part of his Shoma B'Koili, even though he was an Ovid Avodah Zarah, because it all played a role in making him who he was and in acquiring the knowledge that he acquired. The emes, the Gemara describes that when Noch Nafshei the Rish Lakish have a kamitztar Rabbi Yochanan Basrei Tufa, when Rish Lakish died, Rabbi Yochanan was in deep pain, and they sent him Rabbi Elazar ben Pedos, who was very sharp, and everything that Rabbi Yochanan said, he brought him rayas. And Rabbi Yochanan said, Heichad bar Lakisha, where are you, Rish Lakish? Where are you, Rish Lakish? When I used to say something to Rish Lakish, he used to ask me 24 kashas, and I would give him 24 terutzim, and Mamela Rav Cheshmaitza, so we gained the full understanding of the Inyan. Va'at amrit li tana the Messiah loch, you bring me rayas. Otu lo yadana the shapik ha'amina, I don't know that I'm saying good. I mean, I don't need rayas, I need kashas. So it could be also that this koyach of Resh Lakish to ask and to undo and to be soiser has to do with his being a Baal Tshuva. He knew how to undo his entire past and take apart all the everything that he considered to be true and right, and he got to where he got with the Meshoiteit B'daitoi and Mamela. That brought him to being able to be a Makshe Chof Dalid Kushyosa and bring about the Ravche Shmaitze. So that's all because, and that's Rabbi Shlokish L'Shitosai, that Ekev Hashem Avram B'Koili is even those previous years. We can also like too, B'derech HaPilpul, that this is, there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish and Chul and Daf Chavtes, if Yeshno L'Shchita Mitchila V'Atzoif, or Eino L'Shchita El L'Besoif. Right? Rabbi Yochanan says that Yeshno L'Shchita Mitchila V'Atzoif, meaning that it's impossible that the end should give a new quality to the beginning. In other words, if Shechita accomplishes what it accomplishes, it must be that the quality of Shechita is there from the beginning. Whereas Rish Lakish says, Eino l'Shechita el l'besoif, meaning that the end could redefine the beginning. Until the end, the beginning is not a Shechita. But in the end, the beginning takes on a new quality. As you see in the Gemara in Chulun Daf Lamed Vav, that it has a din dam Shechita from the beginning of the Shechita, even though the Shechita becomes a Shechita only b'soif, but the soif redefines the beginning. So that has to do with Rish Lakish being a Baal Tshuva, where the soif redefines the beginning. Al derech zeh, we have a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish in Yoima Dafai and Daled. If Chotzi Shir Osir Min HaTorah or Chotzi Shir Mutar Min HaTorah. Now, if you say Chotzi Shir Osir Min HaTorah, the pshat is that it can't be that when you reach the Kazayas, it becomes Osir. It has to be that the quality of Vista is there from the beginning. It's just that there's a sheer in quantity. Whereas Rish Lakish says, no, that Chotzi Shir Mutar Min HaTorah, that the quality comes to be when you reach the full shear. In other words, that the end could redefine the quality of the beginning. Even though until you got to the end, the beginning was nothing, it was heter. But when you got to the end, the quality was upgraded or downgraded in this situation. But in any case, it's about the end redefining the beginning, and that's Resh Lakish's approach as a Baal Tshuva. In any case, the Ish Tzadik Hoya B'Deirosav Esel Kimis Halech Noach. By Noach, it's kipshuto that he was a tzaddik mitchilasi v'atzoife, because since he wasn't mesuken lahadrich esaolam kuloi b'tshuva, he got that siyata d'shmaya to be a tzaddik mitchilasi v'atzoife. Esel kimis halech noach. He had a sadla toimchoy, but Avram, who was echad hoya Avram v'yirish esaoretz, since his role, his mission was to teach and to guide, so he had to go through the hishalachti lefonov. Yeah, he has to be a mischazik v'hoylech b'tzidkoi me'elach. B'tzidkoi me'elach. Now, the thing is like this. Since Avram Avinu, he reached the understanding of the truth through all the mistakes that he made, through all the mistakes of the Oivei Avodah Zarah, as the Rambam says, that since he was Oivei di Mohem, he knew the Dovar Shegoram Lohem Litois. The Rambam says he understood what causes their mistakes. So the mistakes of the previous generations actually contributed to his avodah, because his avodah was lahadrich esolam kula b'tshuva, and he only was able to address the mistakes by being l'chatchila an oved avodah zarah who was raised between oved avodah zarah. So therefore, those generations that led up to Avram Avinu, they do have rewards. What kind of reward? Because they led up to Avram Avinu. In other words, they were take machisim u'boim, but their being who they were actually is what produced Avram, because Avram learned from their mistakes. So there's a reward, but he gets that reward. So therefore, he's noitel schar keneged kulam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is erech apayim, they're machisim u'born, but in the end, they're not destroyed. They're not destroyed because they did play an important role. And there is schar that's deserved for that they deserve in a sense, and that schar goes to Avram, who actually turned their mistakes into a derech hachayim. Whereas the doris of Me Adam Va'ad Noach, since the Noach was a tzaddik tamim b'dirayim mitzchalasim v'ad soifa, he was aloof, he was detached, he wasn't connected. He didn't learn from those generations. He had a sad letoimchoy. He was Eser Elokim es halech. He didn't learn from the mistakes of those generations. So those generations have no schar coming. And therefore also they were destroyed because they didn't serve any purpose. The Doris from Noach until Avram served a purpose. And because they served the purpose, they weren't destroyed. Erech apayim lefonav. And for the same reason, they do deserve some kind of reward, but that reward is received by Avram. Whereas the Doris of Me Adam Va'ad Noach, they don't deserve any schar because they accomplished nothing. And because Noach, who was Noach, wasn't Noach because of them, he was Noach in spite of them. It had nothing to do with them. And therefore, they got destroyed, and Noach doesn't get the schar keneged kulam. In any case, the bottom line is that circumstances are not by chance. And the circumstances in which Avraham Avinu grew up and the circumstances in which Noach grew up were tailor-made and orchestrated by the Hashgacha Elyoinah. He was Mesukin Lahadrich Es Olam Kulei B'tshuva, and he was a tzaddik hoya b'deroisav, tzaddik mitchilosav atzayfai. It wasn't by chance. It was because the Rebbeinu Shalom set up Avraham Avinu to be the hoya Mesukin Lahadrich Es Olam Kulei B'tshuva. And Memela, everybody has different circumstances. And one way is to just, be negative about everything. And the other way is to be positive about everything and to recognize that all circumstances could be actually brought into our avodas Hashem and could serve us in serving the Rebbeinu Shalom and our people. Okay, having said that, I wish you all a guten Shabbos.